It is a pleasure to be here. This is my 1007th day in office, and this is a day of significance for me because the work we do at the Office of the State Auditor is critical. It's critical to the 2.1 million New Mexicans that rely upon us to ensure that we're always looking out for waste, fraud, or abuse and opportunities to create excellence in government. This particular audit was an opportunity to lift up New Mexico and create excellence in government. We worked very collaboratively with the State of New Mexico leadership, the Office of the Governor, and the General Services Division, and we're joined by a representative from that agency today. We're thrilled to have Ana Silva with us. Ana is no stranger to civil service. She's been an expert in many areas, but at GSD, she really is the go-to person on most special projects for the state of New Mexico, and she has worked tirelessly on accessibility issues for a lifetime. I will just start out by saying that from the beginning, which is how this all began in terms of this particular audit. When I was campaigning to be the auditor of New Mexico, I was joined by colleagues and was frequently presented with a situation where we would go into government buildings and find that they were not ADA compliant, that accessibility issues were at the forefront, and it didn't seem to be much of a priority for anybody. Having been the son of somebody who had muscular dystrophy, my father passed away when he was 49 years old, and he struggled with access to buildings because it wasn't until 30 years ago that the federal government actually passed the Americans with Disabilities Act. So on that 30th anniversary, we decided that we would take on the task of actually auditing the presentation of our buildings and how they are providing access to those people with different abilities, or also known as people with disabilities. And we said that we were going to do this audit. We worked with the governor's office and her agencies that were relevant to this issue, and she agreed that this should be a priority. Of 2.1 million New Mexicans, what we know is that at least 20% of New Mexicans have either identified or self-identified as having disabilities. That's 1 in 5 New Mexicans. All New Mexicans should have equal access to their government, and that means in physical spaces such as buildings owned by the state of New Mexico. So we undertook this audit, and I want to just say we could not have done that without the collaboration and cooperation of the General Services Division. Ana is going to speak here shortly, and it was done with a commitment towards equitable access for all New Mexicans. This report demonstrates the state's commitment to that accessibility for all New Mexicans. It is a priority. It's a priority for our office to make sure that good government is available and accessible to New Mexicans, and it's a priority for this administration to mitigate any challenges or any lapses that we may have had over the last many, many years. In fact, since the inception of the Americans with Disabilities Act. When we're better informed of the needs of New Mexicans, we're able to do better for New Mexicans. That's what this audit is about. It's about paying attention, knowing that we've got opportunities for improvement, and then redressing those issues. So in this particular audit, there were 23 state-owned buildings that were visited and tested for particular compliance with the ADA. We only tested access from the parking lot to the front door of the building. So there was no test work that was done inside the buildings. This is strictly an audit that was conducted in order to find out, can people with different abilities have access to the front door of state-owned buildings in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. We particularly tested 11 key areas to ensure there was compliance, and if there wasn't compliance, we reported out in our audit so that compliance can be obtained. Facilities where this work was performed were chosen throughout the state of New Mexico. We did this work from April 21 till about the end of June of 2021. It included state-owned buildings in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and even rural New Mexico in places like Springer and Deming. Even Fort Stanton had test work done in its community. Now, we've provided the full audit for your teams to review, but things that we tested were items such as number of accessible parking spaces, whether the parking space is the shortest route to the building that is provided for those with different abilities, We made sure that they were wide enough for van accessibility as is required under the ADA. We made sure that there were compliance in terms of signage. This is an issue that is often not followed. And for us as a state of New Mexico, and with Governor Lujan Grisham and her administration, she has made a commitment to not just hold the private sector accountable on these areas, but actually that the state of New Mexico should be a leader in compliance in these areas. So in terms of the findings that you'll identify in the audit, there were several. I'm going to highlight just a couple. Some were, of course, the lack of the appropriate number of accessible parking spaces. Secondly, there was a lack of a number of van accessible spaces. In fact, 1/3 of the parking lots did not have van accessible spaces present. The other issue that we found was pretty prevalent with about 20% of the parking lots that were tested was proper markings on the pavement for these spaces. And one of the things that we don't always talk about for accessibility, and I've been joined by a couple of incredible advocates, actually 3 today. We're joined by Curtis Wilson, KAITY ELLIS, and the director of the New Mexico Commission for the Blind, Dr. Greg Trapp, who is a phenomenal attorney and has been leading this commission for many, many years and has been recognized nationally as an expert in his field and as a champion for those who have disabilities. And we'll allow each of them to speak. But I also wanted to say that we tested even things that go as far and as detailed as slope in parking lots. Slope absolutely affects those people who are either wheelchair confined or primarily in wheelchairs. And again, 2.1 million New Mexicans deserve access to their government. That access is limited when we don't provide ADA compliance with our parking lots to our state-owned buildings. Now, many buildings are leased by the state of New Mexico, and I think maybe Anna's going to speak to that a little bit. So we don't have as much immediate control, but I want to close my opening remarks with really a celebration. Because when we contacted the executive, the governor's office, and the Department of GSD, not only did they collaborate with us to ensure that we were testing the appropriate buildings that we had control over, that once this audit was completed, they immediately started on remediating the problems and the gaps in compliance with the ADA. So I'm going to let Anna speak to the specifics, but I believe approximately 11 parking lots have already been brought up to compliance because of Anna's leadership and the leadership at GSD. So this really is a story that has a great ending because we all agree that access is a priority for people with disabilities. We agree we could do better, and now GSD has done better, and we applaud that work. And we will continue to work with GSD to assist them in coming in full compliance with the areas identified in this particular audit. So with that, I think I want to start out with turning it over to our host, the person who's hosting us today here at the Commission for the Blind. Again, somebody who I've respected for decades as a leader in being an advocate for those with different abilities. Please let me introduce you to Attorney Dr. Greg Trapp. Just imagine there are a lot of applause right now.
Auditor Colon, thank you so much. It's great to be here. Really want to underscore what Auditor Colon has said. It's so critical that the public be able to get inside to receive our services. You know, if we're not able to be accessible up to the door, then you're not going to be able to get in and to be served by us. So as the director of a state agency, it's really critical that I be able to be accessible to my customers, and that's why you'll see here we have 4 accessible parking spaces, 2 of which are van accessible. We really strive to make sure that we're compliant. So Auditor Colon, thank you very much. Appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Attorney Trapp. To add a little more texture to the findings, and to celebrate the work that's been done by GSD before I bring up Anna, they began work immediately after this audit. We finished our test work, I think, the end of June, and literally in July, GSD got to the table, started penning out a plan to address these concerns. They've done everything from new signage to restriping to painting, adding and expanding accessible spaces, and redesigning parking lots and resurfacing parking lots so that we have accessibility for all New Mexicans. This doesn't happen every day. I have a team of several dozen individuals that do the work of the Office of the State Auditor every day. Some of them have joined us today. The people that did the actually audit work are here with me today, and I'm grateful for them. But a lot of times we release our audits and we wait for something to be done. And in this particular case, GSD didn't wait. They took action immediately, and I want to make sure that that's part of the story, because this is good government and it's really lifting up all New Mexicans, particularly a universe of New Mexicans who often find themselves in the margins and often find themselves in a position where they don't have accessibility. So with that, I want to turn it over to Ana Silva, again, a great civil servant who's been a public servant for many, many years, and she has taken the lead on this work at GSD. Ana?
Thank you, Auditor. Good morning. I'd like to start by thanking Auditor Colon and his staff for the opportunity to collaborate on such an important initiative. Governor Lujan Grisham and General Services Department recognize the importance of having its facilities accessible to those seeking state services as well as those seeking employment with the state. The General Services Department's Facilities Management Division began work to address the ADA noncompliance even before, as Auditor Colon mentioned, even before the review was complete. The Facilities Management Division historically hasn't had the resources to ensure ADA parking compliance, but Governor Lujan Grisham has approved additional funding going forward to identify noncompliance and preventive maintenance in all issues statewide with our facilities. With that, I stand for questions.
Thank you, Ana. So with that, I'm going to introduce two other guests that I have, and I'll have them, I think, come to the front of the podium, if that's going to be okay for the camera shot, or you can lift, right, Curtis? Will you be able to lift this high?
Well, I'm as high as I can.
Okay, so let me have you come to the side. I'm going to have him come over here, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, you might just move it over.
Oh, I think.
And let me readjust the microphones for you all as well. Curtis, can you roll up here?
Yeah.
You navigate like a champ. All right, and now I'm going to try and serve you well here. The guys are nervous I'm going to break their equipment. See how I got real quiet? All right, so then I'm going to...
Don't worry, I'm the computer professional, so it's easier to work.
All right, so for this...
Would it be all right down
Let's
here,
see if we have...
guys?
You think so? You got good pickup there? Because everything I've said is secondary to what these two individuals are about to say. Because they're the stakeholders who we've been looking out for. Why don't you test that?
All right, can you guys hear me all right?
3 for 3? Okay, great. Thank you, Curtis.
All right. Thank you, Auditor Colon. I am Curtis Wilson, the chair of the Governor's Commission on Disability. And as an individual going around to try to get services, it is kind of frustrating when you can't get into the building. And that's always the first step. So when Brian called me and told me about this audit, I was like, wow. I've always wondered about if anybody's actually, verified that they have the adequate number of parking spaces. So I'm grateful for the example that the state has set for both our community and the nation and even our municipalities to be able to bring this to their attention that we're customers as well, and we can't get into our services through you, even as state agencies or any other form of business, to get what we need to be done if we can't get inside the building. And that first starts with the parking lot, and it's just a challenge throughout my life, and even in today's day, you got these van accessible parking spaces. Not everybody's got a van. And so we forget to think of one another, and some cars park on the hash mark. So if I got there first and they parked on the hash mark, I can't get in my van. So it's small common sense. Even if there's 2 or more handicap van accessible access points that we're missing, that's a big number to help people that have these conversion vans to be able to get in and out, and even the overall access for everybody with abilities and disabilities to be able to transact their businesses with the state and everything. So I'm very grateful for this audit and its findings and coming to light for myself and for all of us as a community. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. For convenience and for logistics, if you don't mind, if you got a couple of questions that may be similar both for Curtis and for Katie, we'll let you ask those questions, or I'd have you ask those questions now so that we can get Katie up here, and then you can ask Katie similar questions if you like. But this way he doesn't have to go to the back and come forward, make it easy on Curtis, if that's all right.
Curtis, real quick, can you spell and say your first and last name first?
My first name is Curtis, C-U-R-T-I-S-S. It has two S's because I'm extra short and silly. And Wilson with one L because I only have one back, so I guess.
Yeah, I guess the one question.
And your title? No, just restate your title as chair.
Yeah, I'm the chair this year for the New Mexico Governor's Commission on Disability.
So I was surprised when I read this, considering that it's government. You would expect this would be a private sector issue, but you live this every day. I mean,
yeah.
Are you surprised or?
I am surprised, you know, and it happens, it's an issue for all, you know, for the state, city governments, private sector. I am also a federal employee for the U.S. Forest Service. So, you know, it's a big problem. I've lived here in New Mexico, and I've lived in Dallas, Texas, Metroplex, and it's an issue everywhere I've gone, even as an individual on vacation and stuff. So it's a great alignment that the state of New Mexico is bringing this attention to our state. As far as I'm concerned, New Mexico has been the great advocacy for people with disabilities ever since I was a child. You know, a lot of the businesses started doing curb cuts and stuff to get in. Yes, sometimes before the ADA Act, I would have to go back a block or a half a block. I didn't want to drive all the way back in my power wheelchair. I used to jump curbs in college because I didn't want to go all the way, turn around and go a half a block or a full block.
And you were an Aggie, right?
Yeah, New Mexico State Aggie. So yeah, Brian and I met at New Mexico State. We had a couple of classes, I think, maybe together, and we've seen each other in the business college and stuff. So we've known each other for a long time. Go Aggies. Any other questions?
So I would just like to say that really kind of applaud. There's a lot to celebrate here today. Not just GSD's attention to this audit and the governor collaborating with our office to make sure that we had access quickly to these parking lots once we announced the audit, but also for advocates like Curtis, who again I've been friends with for decades, and I watched him go from being a community advocate to being a real leader in this work, and of course now leading the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. And so, Curtis, I'm grateful for your work, and I appreciate your continued advocacy, and you inspire me and countless New Mexicans and exceed expectations daily. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you for your support, Brian, for all that you do. You know, by having people know someone with a disability, it's a game changer for not only me and other people with disabilities, but for the whole community, able or disabled, in my family.
I'm gonna have you talk about a game changer again, maybe without the garbage truck beeping, unless that sound was okay.
That's your next audit.
That's my next audit. He waited all morning till I got here.
Exactly.
Go ahead, and that sentiment's a powerful sentiment, because that's really what this audit was all about. It's about providing access, and you know, for somebody like Curtis and for my friend Katie, when they talk about it being a game changer, this is how government impacts lives, and this is how the work of my office really can make a difference. And this is one of those great days where we actually see that the work we do matters to New Mexicans who are often struggling on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, throughout my life, you know, from grade school all the way, is friends that I made that are able-bodied, you know, walking on two legs, which I think is unusual to me. But, you know, to have friends like Brian become leaders in the community and throughout the state, in all 50 states, to be able to remember, oh, I remember Curtis had a problem with this or that, you know, accessibility-wise for parking spaces and stuff. It's a game changer, not only for me, but like I said before, it's a game changer for all of us upon the earth. It's not just a disability issue. We're all disabled in one form or another, or we will be with an acquired disability at one point in our life. And we all have that as we age. And so we all have challenges, and so it's nice to have these groundbreaking things come to light, you know, so that we can help each other, not only for me now, but for you later.
Perfect. Well stated. Thank you, Curtis. Let me get these contraptions here. On me. All right. Thank you, Curtis.
I'm hoping I'll get some speed bumps on the way back. Let's see. Oops. Got a tire trap.
All right.
Good?
So let me have you come up here, Katie. These folding portable podiums are awesome until they fold on you when you want them open. All right, should be good. Thank you.
No, I think
You good?
yeah, we're good.
Here.
I'll get on the other side, that way you can back straight around.
Perfect. Let me provide one other sentiment as I turn this over to Katie because it's relevant to her remarks. So Anthony and David and Benjamin, the three folks who led on this particular special audit, really, they did amazing work. But what's important for the public to know, as this work started with the public's engagement with our office. So whether it's through our fraud hotline or whether it's through reaching out to our team members and saying these issues are important to New Mexicans, it makes a difference. So we, as I took office, we took the office of the state auditor on the road, and we continue to meet with New Mexicans in rural New Mexico and urban New Mexico, in the north and in the south. And some of our best work is because New Mexicans engage with us, and we're grateful for that. Whether it's whistleblowers that have helped us hold corrupt public officials accountable, or whether it's this particular audit. This started because people contacted our office, and one of those people that works very closely with me in helping making sure I'm paying attention to what's important is KAITY ELLIS. She is an incredible advocate. She is a social worker. She is a graduate. She's finished her master's. By the next time I introduce her, she'll probably have her PhD, but she makes a difference every day and exceeds people's expectations with her capacity. And I'm very, very honored that she decided and agreed to come provide some remarks. So I'm going to bring these lavaliers over here. May I place them in your lap? Is that all right? Is that okay?
Yep.
How are we doing on sound? Why don't you introduce yourself and see how the sound goes.
Hi everyone, I'm KAITY ELLIS, and thank you so much for being here this morning.
How's our sound? Good. It's okay? Mm-hmm. All right, great.
Like Mr. Curtis said and Mr. Trapp said, accessibility is important. Accessibility is inclusion. And I think our state can and should be the model state across the country for inclusion. Inclusion is not just everybody get together and, be in the same room. Inclusion is, can everyone access buildings? Many times, I've actually had to leave. My grandmother and I've had to leave a store, had to leave a government office, drive around for a couple minutes, and then come back to find a parking spot. And 9 times out of 10, I have what is known as a accessible van. It has a ramp that comes out. 9 times out of 10, my grandmother has to back the van out of the parking space because someone's parked right up against it, and that will not allow for the van to let the ramp out. Again, it is so important that New Mexico be the model state for what accessibility is and should be. And accessibility is not just a one-size-fits-all approach. It's individualized. And so by the state auditor coming in and his office coming in and doing this audit, it shows that New Mexico can be the model state for accessibility in this country. And I just appreciate all the work that they did and continue to do in supporting every voice here in New Mexico. And I stand for any questions.
Katie, can you spell your name and give us your title?
My name is Kaity Ellis. It's KAITY ELLIS, and I'm a social worker.
Thank you, Katie. Any other questions maybe we want to pose to Katie?
Have you experienced problems at state-owned buildings before?
Yes.
Can you give us an example?
I'm not quite sure what state building it was, but give you a perfect example. It's having accessible van parking spots that lets the ramp out of the van so that I can get out. A lot of times we'll park there, but another car will come up and park right up against my car because there's not appropriate signage to say van accessible.
You know, I guess what I just want to say is that I think we all agreed, whether it was Anthony or David or Benjamin or my team at the Office of the State Auditor, after having done this audit, it was clear to us that 30 years is enough notice. We're in the 31st year after the Americans with Disability Act was passed by Congress, and I am just grateful that the administration has agreed that this should be and will be a priority. I want to applaud again Anna and her team and their leadership for really giving this immediate attention because they have always believed that every New Mexican deserves access to their government, and that starts with making sure those who have historically been on the margins are served well and have access to resources. And that's what this audit was all about. I'm grateful for people like Katie and Curtis who stand with me and who advise me and who really are just champions in our community. And I'm grateful for Anna and her leadership. And Greg Trapp. Greg has been inspiring me for a very, very long time. I will also say that the Commission for the Blind, we actually conduct that audit at the Office of the State Auditor, and he continues to have an absolutely spotless audit. And I just want to take a minute to applaud Greg and his team for doing a great job here at the Commission. So with that, I'll be happy to stand for any questions or turn the mic back over to anybody else that you might want to visit with.
I'm just curious, how much does the state think will cost to address all the deficiencies that you found in the audit, or just to bring all state buildings up to code?
That's a great question. I'm going to let Anna try and address that as we continue to identify opportunities for improvement. That's probably a moving target. But again, I think it's really important to note that the administration immediately shifted resources to address this issue and not wait. Far too often we work with agencies or local municipalities and they try and figure out ways to get around the audit as opposed to address the issues that are identified in the audit. And that's not what happened here. And that's exceptional government in action. And so I'll just frame it with that, but let Anna come up and provide some thoughts on that.
Can we move back to the...
Oh, I'm sorry. My goodness, I need to lay those lines down again. I had some good thoughts there. Sheesh. Next time you all have full reign to interrupt me when I'm talking if you can't hear me, okay? Okay, Anna, front and center. It's all you. Look at that $1 million smile. You're so awesome.
Just to kind of rephrase the question, you're asking how much funding it's going to take to address some of the ADA non-compliance issues.
address either the findings in the audit or to just correct all state buildings.
Sure. So some exciting news after the audit, as Auditor Colon mentioned. Since that audit, we have addressed all of the findings, so all 23 of the buildings, the issues and the non-compliant findings that were addressed have been completed, including Fort Stanton. So we no longer have any issues pertaining to the audit with the facilities identified.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, how much like was there construction that needed to happen? I'm just kind of curious. Was it just signage? I'm wondering if it was like minimal, what it took, how much money, and what it took to get into.
So some of the facilities required reworking the parking lot. There was signage, there was restriping. However, one of the issues that Auditor Colon and his staff identified was sloping issues. So it did require either moving the actual parking spaces to move them closer to the building, address the slope, reworking the parking lot so that way there was accessibility because we identified some curb issues. So there was some minor construction as well in a few of the buildings.
Did you have a cost on that? I missed it. Do you have an overall cost of?
I'll have to get back to you on the total cost, but I can get back to you on that.
And then the question I have, and granted it's been over a period of time long before you've been in office, but how did we get here, right? I mean, like Auditor Colon mentioned, ADA has been around for 30 years. I assume some of these buildings have been built since that time. What do we know? How did this even happen in the first place?
So a couple things, and if you'd like to address it as well, Auditor Colon, you more than welcome to. But one of the issues is the buildings, when they were purchased as is. So we inherited the issues. As you mentioned, it was been a 30-year-long problem. Funding's been an issue. I'm happy to say that this year, every year, but specifically in this year, we've requested $5 million to address ADA compliance issues statewide in all of our facilities, roughly over 500 buildings that we're looking at. We've also requested, and Governor Lujan Grisham is supporting, additional resources for building inspectors to go statewide throughout our facilities and identify not only preventive maintenance issues, but specifically ADA compliance issues in all of our facilities. So we do have that support. We are requesting additional funds, and Governor Lujan Grisham is supporting that.
So I went over the audit, and you guys did spot checks on 23 sites, is that correct? So
Correct.
were there issues with all 23 that you guys randomly selected?
Yes, there were issues with all 23.
And how many state buildings are there?
There's over 700, roughly 760, but that includes not just office buildings, but warehouses and other facilities as well.
And do we have a list of the buildings of the 23?
Yes, they're identified in the audit, but we can get you those as well.
I apologize if I missed that. I was reading it on my phone.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Let me just add one thought to that, and it gets back to what I think the best part of this story is. This administration didn't wait. This administration made it a priority. Anna and her team just did a remarkable job. As you've heard, even since I last checked in with them, they've now come into full compliance on all 23 buildings. This is exceptional. This is really exceptional governance and identifying the issue and then addressing the issue. We have a lot of audits that are out there that we are still waiting on government leaders to come into compliance. And the year comes around and we do the audit the next year and we're still waiting for compliance. But this administration made a commitment that this was a priority. And so for that I'm thankful, and I really applaud the work of GSD. This is, like I said, this was a significant day for me personally because of my background and the lens I looked through with having a father who died at 49 and had muscular dystrophy and had access issues to buildings his entire life because there wasn't an ADA when he died. So he had no compliance. And now we have an administration who's made compliance a priority and is now seeking additional funding from the legislature so that they can even go above and beyond what we've identified. So my only addition to that comment would be a comment of gratitude that this was immediately embraced, and as we stand here today, just months later, these issues have been addressed. So, good government.
Follow up, if you don't mind, on an auditor form, is that the audit looked at 23 buildings, and you mentioned earlier that there are 700, right? And I think you might have already answered this question, but there are so many other buildings that haven't been looked at. What are you doing about those buildings that might have compliance issues that wasn't subject to the audit?
Sure. So what we're looking at is adding additional resources. So 3 building inspectors and a supervisor. And their task is to go throughout the state and identify issues, not just preventive maintenance-wise, ADA compliance-wise. We're requesting additional funding, as Auditor Colon mentioned. So the sole purpose of these inspectors is to look at the buildings that weren't identified in the audit. So we realized that if we had issues with 23 buildings, we more than likely have additional issues with the remainder of our facilities. But also too, this initiative isn't new to Governor Lujan Grisham. We have already addressed ADA issues in Santa Fe in some of our restrooms. We're looking at, we've addressed ramp issues in some of our facilities. So it's not just parking lot issues, but it's further than that. It's building accessibility issues regarding doors, restrooms, ramps, and others as well. So it's just it's an entire holistic view at each of the different buildings. It's not just parking lots.
I've got a question for Dr. Trapp, if that's okay.
Sure. I would just say, come on up, Greg. I would just say that it's important to contextualize kind of TJ's question, which is what we know is that there have been 7 terms of governors who have not made this a priority. And this governor has chosen to make it a priority. And that's something that's particularly special. And not just based on my audit, as Anna has said, they've addressed some of the internal issues on buildings around the state. And so again, I just appreciate it being a priority. I appreciate the attention that's been given, and I implore the legislature, there's a body of 112 out there that also have to agree that this is important, and I hope that they'll provide that additional funding to the executive branch. Dr. Trapp?
Yep.
My question for you, Dr. Trapp, it sounds like there's a plan to get, at least for the parking aspect, and even more, right, 100% compliant with ADA. Do you think that's ever going to happen, really, listening to what's being said today?
That's a great question. So I started out my career working in this field. I was an attorney with Disability Rights New Mexico. I have been an advocate for many years, and this is something that we've been working on for decades. We have to make progress. Our administration is committed to making progress here. Whenever we do construction, whenever we do renovations, we make sure it's accessible. We work with entities like the Governor's Commission on Disability to get accessibility surveys. In Alamogordo, we have our training center down there. We're adding a 4-plex apartment facility, working with Anna Silva in that, and the Governor's Commission on Disability to make sure it's accessible. So I think it's a commitment, and Auditor Colon, his team, the administration, we're really committed to making things accessible, fixing things when they need to be fixed, identifying problems that exist, and taking prompt corrective action. Better?
Thank you, Dr. Trapp. Any other questions on this beautiful October morning, even though it feels like June or July? No? So let me also just thank Damian Dominguez Juan, who is a distinguished combat veteran who served with distinction, who is an individual who has different abilities. And those different abilities require him to have access in different ways. And we do this work for you and in your honor as well. So thank you for being with us today, Juan Damian. Anything else? All right. Anything else to my wonderful stakeholders? Can my team get a picture with these distinguished folks behind me? Did we get one of those? Look at this picture. I love all these folks up here.